So I went in a sensory deprivation tank last night, also known as a float tank. And I ended up eating a gram of mushrooms and 250 milligrams of edibles, cannabis, well, along with some CBD. Oh, wow. That was a hell of an experience. But either way, my name is Michael John. It is my purpose in life to assist you in becoming your best version, however that may be. Sensory deprivation tank. If, for some odd reason, you've been receiving videos on sensory deprivation tanks and float tanks, and you don't know what it is, and it just keeps on hitting your news feed, and you keep on hearing about it. Maybe a conversation from a friend mentioned it, maybe a Joe Rogan podcast. However it is showing up in your universe, that is your spirit guides assisting you on saying, hey, you should definitely look into this because you could benefit from this experience. So I had floated previously to this about a year ago, and I didn't know what to expect. And, the whole experience, it was just basic. It wasn't nothing, it was relaxing and peaceful, but as far as any type of transformational work, peeling back the layers of my inner being, none of that happened. But I knew the second time that I went into a float tank, it would go a lot better because I would know what to expect. I would know how to position myself, and I would just be more comfortable. And so this time, just randomly, out of nowhere, I haven't Google searched it. There was no reason for it to hit my newsfeed, but it kept on popping up. Every time I, searched a YouTube video or, random article, just kept on coming up, float tank. So I was like, oh, the universe is telling me they want me to go get some sensory deprivation. So then I had a thought. I was like, I think people eat edibles and go into them things and have very transformative experiences. And me personally, I like psychedelics. I use them for spiritual transformation, spiritual evolution, getting to know my true self. And I decided, I was like, well, let me see if I can get a hold of some mushrooms. And sure enough, I wasn't looking to take a tremendous amount because I was going to be out my element. So I just ended up eating a gram of mushrooms, eating a quarter of a brownie that was 1,000 milligrams, so 250 milligrams, and then a little tincture of CBD, and I burned a joint, and I went into the sensory deprivation tank. And the whole time it's kind of odd, because you'll sit there and you'll have your eyes closed, and randomly you'll open your eyes and it'll kind of just shock you because it was like, wow, I just opened up my eyes and it feels like I still have them closed because it's that dark. And I've been dealing with this issue, this whole child traumatic issue that happened to me when I was 4 years old, where my mom's piece of shit boyfriend, which I've forgiven, might not sound like I have, but as far as my understanding of forgiveness, I forgive as much as my spirit will allow for right now. Maybe I'll come back to it and there'll be some more releasing, but as far as now, I feel like I forgiven the situation for what it was. But anyways, so I mentioned this in a previous video from a few days ago where, I have traumatic experience where when I was a child, my mom was at work, her boyfriend had woke me up in the middle of the night and dragged me into the kitchen. And he sat me down in a chair, and I just remember sitting at the kitchen table, and there was a big square mirror, like a big square mirror, and there was a mound of white powder on it with a razor and a pack of smokes. And I just, he would just say ignorant shit, like call me a prick or a motherfucker or a dick, whatever, just verbal abuse. And I remember him offering me a cigarette, and I was just like, no, I'm good. And he pretty much just jammed it down my throat and made me eat it. And then after I had swallowed the cigarette and whatnot, I'm not quite sure on what went on after that, but I know he dipped his finger in the powder, whatever it was, and he stuck it in my mouth. And, and it was odd because for some reason I remember I always, like, the taste of cocaine was always familiar to me. It was always familiar to me, and I didn't understand it. Like, when I first tried cocaine as a teenager, I was like, wow, this is familiar. And then I had that flashback of that scenario in the kitchen with my mom's ex-boyfriend. I'm like, oh shit. And that's when all this started coming up, and I realized it. I didn't realize, like, I must have, like, blocked it out as a child. We tend to do that, like, very traumatic experiences. We'll, like, black out so we're not experiencing it. I've heard this multiple times when, women or men or women are explaining a traumatic experience of them being raped as a child or molested, and it's an ongoing thing, and every time it happens, they kind of just daze out and go somewhere else. And I think that's like a defense mechanism for our spirit or something. Well, anyways, so I didn't remember it until like 15 years later or 12 years later, however. I think I was like 16 when I first tried cocaine or something like that. And yeah, it always tasted familiar. And then I remembered that experience, and I'm like, wow, And I didn't really give much thought about it until I'm going through my awakening and all this stuff is coming to the surface. And I'm starting to realize how much this traumatic experience has pretty much just shaped my life and prevented me from being my true authentic self, whether that's, my not feeling supported, not feeling loved, my feeling of security is gone, all that. And it has pretty much just followed me my whole life. Well, during the sensory deprivation tank, all that started coming to the surface. And like when I had my eyes closed, and then I was like, oh, let me open my eyes. And I was like, oh, wow, it's almost like I still have my eyes closed. I had a vision. It was like almost like a hologram of that whole scenario in the kitchen of me being in the chair and then by the table, seeing the cocaine, seeing Dickhead Paul, and, and all the things that he was doing to me. And then I, started processing that whole scenario and giving it a new meaning so it no longer affected me throughout my life. And, I just applied a new meaning saying, these things happen, and they're not happening to us, they're happening for us. And I know it's really difficult to accept and understand, but it's these difficult things that really transform us and that catalyze these spiritual awakenings, these very transformative points in our life. And that's pretty much what this triggered. And I was able to process that whole scenario, forgive it for what it was as much as I could, and just accept it and let it go and say, hey, it no longer serves me. It happened. I'm stronger because of it happened. And because I'm stronger, I am grateful. And I just let it go. And there was a few other things that came up in there. And if you guys are looking to really peel back the layers of your inner being, and you do have some traumatic childhood shit going on, I highly encourage you do it. Like, you ain't got to eat the mushrooms or the edibles if you don't want to, but if you're into plant medicine, I highly encourage you do that, because it definitely gives that healing some momentum, a lot of momentum. And I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't feel like it could help others. And it really tremendously helped me. I'm pretty much at a point right now where I know it's helped, and I think it's helped more than I'm actually realizing right now, and it's just the beginning. So I'll tune in later and just see, if I've noticed anything more substantial, like maybe I'm more motivated, more driven, more confident, more outgoing, more my true self. All that will come to the surface, and I'll know, how how impactful this whole scenario was. But I definitely encourage it. I definitely support you in your healing, because once you heal, oh man, life just changes. You're no longer a victim. There's no longer them things that are holding you back from being your true self and just experiencing the world from a whole new mindset, a new set of eyes. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And if you have any questions or any comments or anything, just leave a comment, and I'll reply to it as fast as I can. Just, be patient, because, the way I'm living my life nowadays is as it comes. I'm not planning. If I don't feel like doing something at the time, I don't do it. No, fuck that. I'm not holding myself. I used to hold all these expectations of myself. You know what? I would have imaginary expectations that I thought I was supposed to live up to that somebody else put on me. And these are just fucking illusions in my head, being like, oh, they're expecting me to do this, so I better get to it. And it's in my head. It's a fucking illusion. Them people are probably not even thinking about me. It's ridiculous. And we do this to ourselves. So if you find yourself, and I just realized this, that, a lot of the anxiety that I had in my life was a false expectation that I was supposed to live up to something that I wasn't, that somebody else was putting on me, an expectation. Like, for example, let's just say, you clean the kitchen every day after dinner, and one day you don't feel like doing it, and you don't do it, but you're sitting in bed and you're like, wow, this is going to cause an argument, because I know they hold an expectation of me to clean the kitchen, because they always have, but I don't feel like doing it today, and I know they're going to say something. So that feeling's in the back of your head that they expect you to do something. But that's just an illusion. Take it out your head. Life's an illusion. The moment you wake up, you will see. But more importantly, love yourself, subscribe, share, and just be you.